Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks, and today, this is about as good as episodes get. UFC 300 this upcoming weekend, so we are breaking down that card. We've been fighting for 4 weeks since the ending of UFC 299. We've said, hey, we got a couple of bad fight night cards to get through, and then we hit the jackpot with 300, and here we are. It is the jackpot, UFC 300. Stack fights. We're going to try and get through as many fights as we can today. We're not going to go, 2.5 hours and talk about them all. We may go a little bit past our usual hour mark to get a little bit deeper into the prelims than we usually do because there's that many stacked fights on this card, and the prelims are important fights, guys with big names. So, going to try and get through as many fights today as we can. But before we kick off with the fights, UFC 300, where are you guys at in terms of excitement level? How are you guys feeling before this historic card? Anthony, we can throw it over to you first.
Excitement level's probably a 10 out of 10. The card stack. We've been waiting on this. This is the give or take for our excitement level as UFC fans probably being at a 2 or lower for the past 4 weeks. But yeah, I mean, it's finally here. Like we always say, I feel like when it's a big pay-per-view weekend, the whole week through leading up, the vibes are up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can't wait. This is the one we've been waiting for since it was announced with all the other fights were. I know we had to wait, and we were waiting a long time for that main event, but now we have it, and here we are. Can't wait for Saturday to come around.
Yep, and we may be staring down the barrel of the best fight card of all time. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We kind of have to see how it plays out on paper, but there's a potential that this is the best one in the history of the promotion. So, and Jerry, like you said, they had to wait to get to the main event. They found the main event, Jamahal Hill versus Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight title. Today, the goal for today for me, not forget to mention the odds when we kick off these fights. Right now, we have a pretty closely lined fight, looking at plus 110 on Jamahal Hill. Alex Pereira, the favorite, minus 130. Pretty close, give or take. Some spots have it lined closer than that, but outstanding fight here in the main event. Light heavyweight title on the line. Jamahal Hill, former champion, coming back to face current champion Alex Pereira, two of the best and most dangerous strikers in this division and in the sport. What are you guys looking at for this main event? What do you make of the main event? Jerry, we can throw it over to you first.
I mean, first things first. I mean, I would say I thought this would be the 301 main event, and I think that was part of that delay, and we've talked about this before. But that doesn't matter. Alex Pereira, this just shows, not knocking on Jamahal Hill, but Alex Pereira has risen to stardom already in the UFC in 6, 7, 8 fights, which is crazy. So obviously all the stuff with Izzy and that helped shoot him up. Had some nice knockouts, but it was surprising to me that a guy could be on the UFC 300, like you said earlier, best fight card of all time, arguably, and headline that with that short of a tenure in the UFC. But I am very excited for this fight. I think it'll be a very good, entertaining stand-up war. I don't know if Jamahal Hill will go for takedowns. I don't think Alex Pereira will go for takedowns. It's going to be one that I think these two guys are going to just stand up, and last man standing takes it. So should be a war.
I agree. I think I'm definitely one of the people that when Alex is fighting, I'm always going to be there for it. So I'm excited that other people feel the same way. I'm probably one that's been sleeping on Jamahal Hill a little bit, but I was, getting ready for this fight, watching some of the highlights, and I guess it's not my fault he keeps knocking people out in the first round, or it's not his fault. So I like that. I've been seeing, the discourse online. I think people are probably just excited in general. They're saying this, this should be a banger and stuff. So we'll see. I think I was like that Jimmy Crute fight. I was watching the highlights of that where Jamahal Hill was just looked beautiful with the striking. And then I was trying to think. It might have been his last fight, but I was also was it? No, not Glover. Oh, Santos. I saw some of Santos, and Jamahal Hill was getting hit a little bit too, and the chin was looking good. So, I'm excited. two little different styles of striking. Both of these people have been 5 rounds too, so I'm just overall excited. I would The one thing I may be concerned of is Alex's chin, honestly, but then again, I guess I mean Santos is pretty strong, but there's the thing that with Alex, no one really hits harder than him, so it should be. Could be over at any moment too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to touch on, Jerry, what you said about Pereira rising to the top of kind of UFC stardom. And, even if he was supposed to be the UFC 301 main event, I think it really speaks to how he's resonated with fans. The fact that he can be the 300 main event. And what he's done, like you said, hasn't been in the UFC for a long time, but he's headlined Madison Square Garden twice. And once was against Izzy and once was against Prochazka, and he was probably the A side for the Prochazka main event. What this guy has done in terms of gaining fans and getting himself in good positions to headline Madison Square Garden twice, now UFC 300. Part of that is being willing to say yes as well to some of these chances. Never declines a fight. So a lot of credit to him for what he's done in building himself up. And as far as Jamahal goes, this is a guy who has really looked good in some of those fights you mentioned, Anthony, where the striking looks really, really, really good at various points. And there's not many guys especially in light heavyweight that I think could compete with Alex on the feet. But I think Jamahal might be the only one. Maybe there's a couple others, but I think Jamahal can compete on the feet. And I think the list of people that can in this division is very short. So I think that is part of the reason this fight was booked and part of the reason fans are so excited, because it does present one of the guys who can kind of entertain Alex's fighting style. It's not a guy who's going to go out there and look to take him down. Maybe he does take him down, but it's not like a guarantee that, he's immediately wrestling off the bat. He's going to entertain these striking exchanges, and that makes a really fun fight. And before we get into some of the more in-depth skills, I guess, but are you guys concerned about Jamahal Hill's Achilles tear at all? That happened, let's see, last summer. So it's coming back in less than a year. Are you guys concerned with the Achilles tear and this being Jamahal's first fight back? Jerry, we can swing it over to you first this time.
Yeah, definitely a concern in the back of my mind. And it's because that's such a serious injury. I know it came playing basketball for him, which that's a freak injury as well. You think these guys in the UFC, if they're getting hurt in the octagon, not outside. So it's one thing that you kind of just have to keep an eye on. And I don't know how much pressure you can put on it. And you need to have good, strong foot posture and strong legs in this, especially for a stand-up war like this. This might mean it might just be hands for a lot of it. And that's something that I'm sure Alex Pereira could take advantage of if he's throwing leg kicks and Jamahal Hill isn't checking them or isn't throwing them back. It could be quick work for him. And that's kind of why I'm curious. Like the over-unders on at least one of the betting sites is 1.5. So they think this might be done really quickly.
I wasn't. I guess I wasn't worried for the Achilles itself. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of, it's not the ideal amount of time off, but it is a lot of time off. I don't think it's necessarily rushed, depending specifically on his rehab went. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess the thing I would think about would be depends on your thoughts on ring rust. So that could definitely maybe be an issue after that long layoff. For some ring rust and then get put in there with someone whose nickname is Stonehands, it might be a big change from what he's been doing. But overall, I would say it should be good, I think.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the big questions I have is like, you can't really train, and we haven't seen anyone really tear their Achilles as far as being a UFC fighter. In football or basketball or other sports, people tear their Achilles, and you can kind of see how it has affected different guys' careers. It's just not a common injury in fighting, and part of that is because you're not as an explosive of an athlete. You're doing different movements, and maybe that means you can come back better from it because you're not putting as much strain on that tendon. But also, we don't really have any prior examples to really know what this is going to look like coming back from an Achilles. So I think it's kind of hard to, obviously it's not a positive, but I think it's hard to say whether, hey, maybe it affects his career and he's never the same fighter again. Maybe it is even a blimp on the radar in the long term. So I think it's really tough to say definitively just because of the lack of evidence.
That
Now, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say that is fair too. I didn't think of that because like ACLs we've seen enough in the sport, whether that be like Tom Aspinall, won a title shortly after he came back, Tony Ferguson and stuff. This going to be Cater's first fight?
Kattar
That
and Rakic
or
both coming back from knee injuries on the
so
prelims.
yeah. So the injuries, but yeah, that is a good point. That Achilles, no real like path yet, or that's been shown.
And then looking at kind of the more, I don't want to say in-depth skills because you can look at a fight differently, but when you guys look at this fight, how do you think it's going to go down? What do you think are the skills that matter? Predictions, maybe even at this point. What do you guys kind of foresee when this main event goes down? Anthony, I think it's your turn to go first on this one.
I mean, what I see is this is kind of my thought process, and maybe why I tend to lean Alex a lot of the time is if the end of the day, if you think this is going to be a striking match, I'm going to pick Alex to win. So I think the counters, the power, that left hook. I think also some leg kicks. I can't remember. I don't know how Jamahal is with checking leg kicks, but regardless, Pereira was going to land some for sure. So that's why, at least when this fight was first announced, that's why I was like fully leaning Pereira. But then I don't know. Hill just has that. He just lands shots, and then it seems like every fight, he's has all those finishes. He lands that one shot or that one combo that just tends to keep putting people's lights out. And I don't know if Pereira's chin's the strongest, so that does worry me. And then also over 5 rounds, you're given Hill 5 rounds to do it. Now I don't know if I think I'll stick with the striking for now, but then still at the end of the day, I'm going Alex's striking, but I'll leave it up to you guys. I don't know how much you think the ground game's coming into effect, and there I just don't know, the game plan yet.
I mean, bouncing off what you said, I think the ground game could come into a little bit of it, but I think it would be more from Alex's side of things than it would be from Jamal's. But it's one of those things like, and I could be completely wrong. For some reason, I thought Alex went to the takedowns a little bit against Izzy in one of those two fights. I think it was the first fight he tried to take him down a bit, but
I want to say he landed one off the top, man. I think he landed at least one.
Yeah, so something that he might have, and training with Glover Teixeira, that's a whole nother aspect I have on this fight is the whole redemption for Glover after he just lost in the vacant belt against Jamal Hill. And I saw Charles Oliveira came out and said he's doing this fight for redemption. This fight isn't just for him to win the belt. It's to get back for Glover and get back for all the Brazilians. So I think there's a little added motivation. But as far as this fight goes, I think it's going to see very few takedown attempts. Might be just something just to keep them on their toes or one way or another. Just maybe fake a shot, see what happens, and then try and go up. But I think it'll be stand up. I don't have a prediction right now. I think it's going to be a war. And very excited for it.
Mm-hmm. And to answer your question about the grappling, Alex and Izzy split 1-1 on the takedowns in the first fight. They each landed one. None in the other fights. So when I look at this fight, I think Jamal is a much different striker than Alex has fought in the past. And when you're looking at how to beat Alex, I think you need to knock him out and rather do it early. Because if you let him go 5 rounds, chipping away at your legs, is just like a tough fight to win. And we saw that in the first Izzy fight when Izzy's up on the scorecards in round 5 and Alex gets that finish in round 5. because he's so dangerous. He can go 5 rounds. He's got knockout power in the 5th, and he chips away at you to where this damage kind of stacks up throughout the fight. So I think to beat him, you need to finish him early. At the same time, you can't be an idiot while you're trying to finish him early. Jiri Prochazka, I mean, the finishing sequence, he just goes crazy, and he goes out there and gets knocked out in the 2nd round. Because he did kind of just send it and try and get that finish when he had Alex backed up. So I think Jamahal is somewhere in that middle ground where he has the power to knock Alex out early, but he also doesn't need to get stupid to do it. He can stay technical and kind of pick shots without, really being over aggressive to the point where he gets countered. Now, you can still get countered if you're being technical. It's not like it's impossible to counter somebody while they're being technical. It'll just make it harder for Alex to land the counter shot. And I really don't like Alex's defense, which seems strange to say because he is such a good kickboxer. But he does this thing where he just kind of sticks his arms out and creates a frame. And that works a lot better when you're going up against shorter guys, when you're fighting at middleweight. When you're up at light heavyweight, I think Jamahal can take shots over top of the arms, and I think he can rip uppercuts underneath them. So I think Jamahal finds the chin here and knocks Alex out relatively early, probably in the first 2 rounds. With that being said, if he can't find that shot early, I think the Alex leg kicks are going to add up really, really quickly. I don't think it will be as bad as the Prochazka fight. We'll talk about Jiri a little bit later, but Jiri is dreadfully terrible at checking leg kicks, and his stance make sure that each one lands with 100% impact. And if you kick his leg, his entire game is off. So I don't think it will be as bad as the Jiri fight if Jamahal is getting kicked in the legs, but it will probably by round 3 really, really start to add up. So I think Jamahal needs a knockout in probably the first 2. Anything past that, his legs are going to be beat up bad, and he's practically throwing Hail Marys. So I'd say, and I think he can find the knockout in the first 2 rounds. And so that's my prediction there. And as far as grappling goes, I think if we see grappling, it's Jamahal Hill getting hit with a leg kick that he doesn't like and going, all right, let me get this to the ground so I can not get kicked in the leg. I think that is the most likely scenario that we see grappling is Jamahal deciding, I'd rather not get kicked in the leg again. My leg hurts. I'm going to land a takedown. So, or at least attempt to land one. So I think that's the condition that we see grappling, but I don't think it's very common. So that's kind of where my head is at right now with this fight.
Yeah, there's still the aspect of Jamahal Hill never lost the belt. So he could still claim that he is the champion. He did vacate it. But the guys Alex has come against, 2 of the best in that division. I think we're going to have a hell of a fight. And when your nicknames are Stonehands and Sweet Dreams, I don't see this fight going very long.
See, I'm here. You said, what'd you say the over-under was on this one, the line for rounds?
Over-under was 1.5 rounds.
Because I agree with Sweet Dreams finding it, like I said earlier, he had those 4 first-round knockouts, I think, on the title, on the way to the title the first time. I guess I see the fight going to the later rounds. That's also kind of why I'm leaning Alex. But like you were saying of how Alex can be touchable, he'll just he's such good at finding his strikes in outside of range and stuff, and he's just so lengthy that I feel like he starts punches or combos from so far out, and then it seems like he's right up in your grill towards the 3rd or 4th shot. But yeah, I'm excited. We'll see. Definitely should be a highlight to cap off UFC 300 for one of these fighters.
Yeah, it's a great fight, and I think someone is gonna. It's one of those fights where if you confidently pick either side, it's like you could look really dumb because they both have lethal power. One more thing I'll add here is that Jamahal Hill, very underrated kicking game and very underrated clinch game. Gets to the tie clinch very well, throws knees very well, and could compete with Alex in that area. Just want to throw that out there. I don't think it's going to be either the kicks or the knees are going to be super massive, but I think it is a very underrated part of Jamahal Hill's game. I mean, he hurt Glover with 4 different head kicks in that fight. I think his kicks and knees are often overshadowed by his boxing, so I do want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the co-main event, we have Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan for the women's strawweight title. And this is Chinese woman versus Chinese woman. I assume that's the first time in UFC history 2 fighters from China have fought for the belt. I mean, Weili's the only champ, so it'd have to be. And this fight, okay, don't forget the line. The line, massively wide. Let's see here. Minus 485, Weili, Yan, plus 370. And that kind of fluctuates a little bit depending on where you look. But
just something on that line really quickly. It was up until the last 2 days, it was Weili around minus like 250, 260. So it took a massive leap in the last few days.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good call on that.
Really?
Yeah. Now, this fight, I think it's going to be a very entertaining fight if they strike. I mean, these two are both very, very dangerous strikers. Yan coming off a knockout over Jessica Andrade. Weili grappled a lot more in her most recent fights, but she does hold the best fight in women's MMA history in her 5-round war with Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So I think we have a very good chance of getting a great fight here. What do you guys make of this co-main event? Jerry, we'll send it over to you.
For starters, I wish this had been in China. I know there was talks of doing a fight in China, and I think it fell through. So this would have been awesome to see there, just the crowd behind it. But I think it's going to be a hell of a war. Two people that I would assume have very mutual respect for each other. We've seen what Weili's done in the UFC before. Obviously, the fight with first one with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, then her spinning back fist against her as well, and like you said, beat Carla Esparza by submission. So she's finding more and more all around. I think a large part of that is training in. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's training in Phoenix with Henry Cejudo. So it's one of those things that it's a very well-rounded game, and someone who's was great on the ground, an Olympic gold medalist wrestler. It's something like that, but I still lean Weili in this one. Yan has been on the up and up recently. Did lose 2 fights before her latest winning streak, which was Mackenzie Dern and Jessica Andrade. My only concern for Weili is she's approaching that 35 mark. She is still only 34, so the number doesn't change, but she's getting up there a little bit and has fought a lot of times. So there's something on the backside that I'm a little concerned about that maybe could be an advantage to Yan.
I think that I'd agree. I'm definitely leaning more Weili Zhang. I think her striking, I believe, is better. She's put on some great shows, some great performances, and then like you just brought up, she was on a 2-fight slid before she went on this most recent run, and one of the people Young lost to was Carla Esparza, and that one she got taken down three times and was dominated on the ground a little bit, and Zhang has been using some wrestling more recently in her fights and stuff, and shown that as a path to victory for her. So I would take the balanced fighting of Zhang, the on the feet and possibly on the ground to be to win, get the win.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think Weili is the best women's fighter on the planet by a pretty decent margin. And I think, if this fight with Yan is we're just striking it out, I think she's at minimum equally as good on the feet. I'd probably say she's better. Definitely more powerful, more proven against elite strikers. And Yan looked god awful in the grappling against Carla Esparza. I mean, it was bad. Taken down quickly in each round. That was a 2-round fight. Quickly in each round, could not get up. Dominated with ground and pound. So I think if Weili uses her grappling, this can get out of hand very, very, very fast. So I really, really like Weili in this fight. That said, maybe we get a close fight if they're striking it out for 5 rounds. But I really have a hard time seeing Yan overcome the grappling of Weili, considering I know MMA math doesn't work, but Weili out-grappled Carla, who out-grappled Yan. And I know that's a little bit of a finicky argument, but Carla Esparza took her down in like 5 seconds in that fight. It's
that
tough
makes sense.
to say she can grapple here.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because I was looking at it and I was like, 3 takedowns. Why do I feel like I remember so much, like so many more? And it's like, oh no, because she only needed 3 takedowns because she could not get up in that fight. So
And that's one of the things that if she can get a takedown early, I think we'll see Weili go for takedowns pretty quickly from the start. I don't think she'll let it stand up because what you're saying, James, Jan is very dangerous on the feet, less so on the ground. So I think we'll see her shoot for some takedowns early on, unlike the main event.
Hmm. Yeah, and if she lands takedowns, I mean, the thing about Weili is that she's like top percentile in terms of like the physicality for this division and like physical strength and still having the cardio as well. Like strength and conditioning, Weili is might be the best fighter this division has ever seen in that category. Um, so when she grapples, she also is going to have the technique advantage, and when she gets on top, she throws ground and pounds. And if you give up your back, she can attempt subs. It's like it's a lot of ways for Weili to end this fight on the ground. I mean, Weili gets into side control and just lands elbows just like Carla did. I wouldn't be shocked at all if this is over in 2 rounds. Like this, I think it's very out of hand very quickly. That said, if once again if they're on the feet striking, this could be another 5 round war. This could be another one of the best women's fights of all times. And that's why this is on this card. Um, but with that being said, like Weili went and took Lemos down. So why wouldn't she do it here against someone? Lemos at least has guillotine upside that, hey, she might jump a gilly while you're attempting a takedown. I don't think Jan even has that. So I think it's going to be one way grapple fest for Weili in this one.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I'm still excited for this fight, but I
Yeah.
just think the odds are pretty telling of what's going to happen.
All right. Yeah, I agree too. The odds are there's a reason they moved from the minus 250 range to the 450 range. That didn't happen by accident.
No.
Maybe it gets a little crazy because, Weili's going to be in a lot of parlays at the end of the week, and maybe this gets to minus 600 and you start going, all right, calm down a little bit. But right now, I'd say the line is fairly accurate. Moving to a fight that is much closer lined, we have Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje for the BMF title. Max Holloway sitting at plus 145 with Gaethje on the other side at minus 175. This is another fight that has seen some line movement. I believe Max opened as like a plus 170 or 160 or plus 170 or plus 160, somewhere in there. Moved to like plus 205 and has dropped back down to plus 150. So we've kind of seen this line come out, get bet up on the Gaethje side, and then a lot of comeback on the Max side of things to get it a little bit lower than where it was originally at. But this is probably one of the, like, in terms of like purely booking fights on paper, and you go, hey, let's make the best fight possible. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, like, might be the best fight you can book on paper. What do you guys think of Max Holloway getting a shot at the BMF title? And what do you make of this fight in terms of a pure entertainment chaos perspective? Jerry, we can throw it over to you first.
I mean, I'll start with the first part. I think Max Holloway deserves this shot for the BMF. However you feel about the BMF title, to hell with it. I think it's entertaining. I think I am surprised it's on 300 in terms of we've seen him use it, especially last year. We don't have a main event. Let's throw the BMF title out here. Why not? But he wasn't going to get a title shot. It doesn't seem at featherweight at the moment. So why not move up? And he'll be fighting exactly 5 years to the day of his last UFC lightweight battle, which was for the interim title against Dustin Poirier. Came out on the wrong side of that one, but I think this fight's going to be an absolute brawl. Anytime Justin Gaethje's fighting, people are gonna. There's going to be blood. There's going to be no one's leaving this fight healthy, which is why I think it went back to what we talked about before of when we were discussing who Islam can fight next. We don't see either of these guys. Say Holloway comes out and wins, he won't be ready to fight for a while. Gaethje likewise, because two of the best fighters, best strikers we've ever seen in the UFC. Holloway has won the most strikes landed, most significant strikes landed. Is it in all of UFC or just the featherweight? 'Cause I think it might be
All of
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all of UFC, and it's by a large margin. It's by like
yeah,
1,000 strikes, I think.
yeah. He's gonna go out there and just throw hands. Gaethje's gonna throw hands, throw his leg kicks. My only concern for Max is he's moving up a division, so maybe the size change will be of note. But last time, I'm sure he's been planning this for a while, a slight move up if he wasn't going to get a title shot. And his last fight was August, so he's had plenty of time to get that muscle up.
Yeah, I was also worried about the move up, especially like you just said. The last time he did this was against Dustin Poirier, and that was a loss. But to go back to the first thing, yeah, I think Holloway's 100% deserving, and kind of like you said, I mean, this is about as good as a fight as you could make on the entertainment side. Um, it's just these certain fighters, whether that be Gaethje, or whether that be Holloway, where people are going to tune in regardless of who they're fighting because they do such amazing things in the octagon. Um, so yeah, this is definitely worthy of the BMF belt, and it has all the ingredients to be like this could possibly probably be the best fight on the card. Um,
Mhm.
there's that's definitely a future that can happen.
Yeah. And to backpack off Jerry, your stat, significant strikes landed. Max Holloway has a record for most significant strikes landed in the UFC with 3,197. Angela Hill is currently in second place with 1,196. So he holds over 1,000 strikes over second place. And if you go down that list a little bit further, quite a few people in the 1,800 range, quite a few people in the 1,700 range. Max Holloway, north of 3,000 strikes landed in the UFC octagon. And listen, if we're doing this BMF thing, let's make it an excuse to book the best fights possible. I'm not going to complain if a silver belt that doesn't really mean anything means we get to see Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway fight. Also, that belt also I believe gets you pay-per-view points and gets the fighters paid more. So there's a lot of positives here. Even if people think it's meaningless, it does help the fans see fun fights, and it does help the fighters get paid more that are fighting for it. So I'm really not going to be too upset. And UFC 300, hey, let's book the best fight possible. Gaethje Holloway, like, fine by me. I do want to talk about Gaethje moving up a division. Obviously, the last time he moved up to 155, he lost to Dustin Poirier. That fight, he didn't have quite as much time to prepare, and it was in 2019. Now he's doing it again. This time, he's got more time to prepare. It's 5 years later. And in terms of where Holloway is at, I believe Holloway is 31. So it's also the difference of being a 36-year-old to being a 31-year-old when you're looking at that 5-year difference. And that is very, very important in terms of age. And it's not like last time he was 30 and this time he's 35. It's 26 to 31, I think, is a really big difference. So in my opinion, I'm not too worried about the size, or I shouldn't say I'm not too worried. I'm not as worried about the size and think he's going to be better prepared for the lightweight division this time around than he was in 2019. Do you guys agree with that? Because I understand if you wouldn't. Where are you guys at right now with the weight move up to lightweight? Anthony, you can take us with this one.
Oh, I agree with that. I think he could be better. It's just, I guess, in general, put it this way: if the name wasn't Justin Gaethje, I wouldn't be worried. I guess it's more of just in the scope of things. Not only is he going up and he's fighting Gaethje, I think there's just a lot of things moving in the direction of not ideal for him. But yeah, I don't doubt that with the longer time to prepare, older, wiser, he's been in the game for so long, done what he's needed to do. So I have no doubt that he's probably better off this time moving up than last time. It's just that um, when it comes to the actual fighting, like the power of Gaethje does worry me for Max, and you know it's tough too because sometimes Gaethje the speed is crazy on him. Obviously, I feel like Holloway has the speed advantage in most of his fights, definitely with his combos and stuff. But sometimes when Gaethje swings on his counters, it's to take a head off, and that worries me a little bit because I don't know if there's anyone I would say that hits like Gaethje in the featherweight division. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you. It's less that I'm worried about Holloway moving up because I think he does have sufficient time this time around. And at that point, Dustin Poirier, when he fought him last time, was kind of on a hot streak. Just beat Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, and Eddie Alvarez. Went on to fight Habib in his next fight. Lost that, as we all know, because Habib went undefeated. But I think he's much more prepared this time, and he can strike with anybody. I'll put it that way. It doesn't matter who's in front of him. The only 4 losses in the last decade for Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier at lightweight, and then 3 times against Alexander Volkanovski. So he beats everybody else he fights. Gaethje is a different breed, though. He is a scary guy. Obviously, trains at the altitude and the elevation, so maybe that gives him a little extra boost. I think this will be a 5-round war, and if anything, I think I could see a very, very bloody decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's important to know, like you said, like going up to fight Gaethje, very two different things. So I agree with that. And the difference in power that you're jumping to is you're going from featherweight to the hardest hitting guy at lightweight. So it's like you're jumping to a crazy spot in the division to kind of jump in and get your feet wet. It's not like you're in there with, I don't really want to throw out any other names, but it's not like you're in there with Michael Chandler and, he's going to gas a little bit earlier and his shots are easier to see coming. It's like Gaethje very, very fast, throws his hands, and has gotten much better at actually being technical and not just like, all right, we're going to get in war. I'm going to hit harder and I'm a bigger dog than you. His actual technique has improved. I mean, it's absurd the amount of improvement that we've seen in his boxing in the last 5 years. If you go watch Gaethje now to where he was 5 years ago, it's like ridiculous the amount of improvements he's made. So tons of credit to him for that. In this fight, I think it's going to be really, really close, and I think it's going to come down to who gets the parts of their game. How do I word this? Each guy has keys to victory. Which guy is going to implement those keys a little bit better? For Gaethje, if he lands some big shots early, cuts Max, can get some blood going in Max's eyes, makes it harder to see, wins the first couple rounds based off damage, and he's kicking the leg consistently, like that's a good path to victory for him. If Max is able to really cut some angles and can avoid at least massive shots, he's going to get hit early in this fight. But if he avoids the right hand coming at 110 miles an hour, that's meant to take his head off. If he can avoid some of those massive shots, limit the leg kicks coming back his way, and start digging to the body, whether it be with inboxing combos or whether it be kicks to the body, and then you're in round 3 and you haven't been hit clean, and you're not all bloodied up and you're not concussed and you're still there, he's going to have a massive cardio advantage, and then he can really start to pour it on with volume and with even more body shots. So I think it's just the first 2 rounds of this fight, whoever can kind of get their game plan going, I think is going to be the winner. And I think the winner of this fight is going to look like, I kind of want to say the winner of this fight is going to look like very dominant in a weird way. Maybe it becomes a brawl, but I think the guy who can really get their game plan going early is just going to really take over in the later rounds.
Well, I do have a question for both of you guys just off of that. What happened? What do you think happens next for the winner of this? Well, that's a loaded question because it seems like we're going to have Dustin Poirier and Islam Makhachev fight for the belt, but what do you think happens next?
I think.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, one of these guys should get a title shot next. So whoever wins, especially this was such a pro UFC move fight. I think, in the sense of there was a path for both of these guys to fight for the title, and obviously taking this fight and losing might screw that up. So if whoever takes this fight, or so taking this fight and whoever wins, I think should get the nod the other way and then get some luck to maybe fight for the title, because I think both of them are still in position, even though both fights both champions in their division are most likely booked, even though there's still some gray area. But yeah.
Yeah, this is tough because if they actually do Islam and Dustin Poirier, congratulations, you have an absolute log jam because you'll have the winner of this fight and the winner of the next fight between Charles and Arman. Like, someone's going to get screwed. Whoever fights for the title is going to be one of the two winners of these two fights is going to fight for the title next. It can only be one of them, so someone's getting screwed. Barring
fight.
What'd you say?
3-way UFC fight. Two winners. The winner of.
I think there is a world where they appease one of the two camps. What the UFC wants. I think they want Conor to fight Chandler, beat Chandler, and then it's easy to distract somebody with a Conor McGregor fight. So I think if Max, Gaethje, or Charles win, I don't think they do Arman Conor, but I think if any of those three guys win, you can say, hey, you're not fighting for the title, but you get to fight Conor, and then boom, all your worries are gone. So I think that is the hope, but if that doesn't happen, then I think we have some real problems. On the Max Holloway side, even if Max Holloway loses this fight, I think he should get the next title fight a title fight the next time he goes down to 145. If he loses this fight, it's probably a violent loss. You need to take 8 months off. But I think the next time Max fights at 145 pounds, I do think it should be for the title, especially if Volkanovski is not the one holding that belt. So
exactly, there's no way you could deny him if Volk's not champion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big thing that kind of doesn't concern me. It gives me hope for Max Holloway. He might not have anything to lose in this fight. He could still go back down and run through whatever featherweights he has to. He should get a title shot next. It's not like it's hindering that. But if he comes out and beats Justin Gaethje, I don't think he will. I think Gaethje is just too powerful and too much of that dog in him in this aspect for 155. But if Holloway does come out, then he's like, oh, okay, I have the option to go back down and fight for the belt down there. And that's a shoe-in if he's fighting for the title against Topuria if he beats Gaethje. Or even do something up at lightweight, like you were saying, possible McGregor fight, possible other fights that he can be made. It's something like that. So it's a win-win for Max, in my opinion. And I think looking at it next, Justin Gaethje could be the one who gets screwed because if he doesn't, because my concern ahead was the winner of this is going to be beaten up and hurt a bit and wouldn't be able to recover in time. What happens if Gaethje comes out and knocks out or finishes Holloway pretty early on, unscathed? Do you then give him the title shot instead of Poirier? We haven't seen anything signed or announced. Just seems like talks at the moment, but could you do something like that as well, potentially?
Yeah, I think we'll have more clarity on this next week when we do the recap, but Justin Gaethje, I mean, he knocked Poirier out less than a year ago. So, like, if the argument is Gaethje or Poirier, I don't think there's a discussion. If Gaethje is able to fight the day they want him to fight.
Is this a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight?
5.
Okay, I was hoping for that because technically the BMF belt is on it, right? Mm-hmm. Would that be why? Okay, because I was gonna say it's tough. I'm rooting for Max. I'll say that, and but it's tough. I just don't know how you go up a weight and beat Gaethje with how great he's looked. And it's tough too because Gaethje's last 2 losses were from submissions, and I don't know if I see Max really landing one of those. Or he did lose to Poirier the first time, and that was in the 4th round, and Poirier had swarmed him that whole night and landed, I think upwards of 300 strikes, which maybe does give me a little hope, as in Max does that better than anyone, as we were giving out all the stats of just landing more strikes and just smothering people and drowning them in strikes and getting maybe a late round knockout. Or none. He tends to just win a decision. That's why he has so many strikes. But yeah, I think, like you said, if he can get his game plan going, if Max hits that flow state, I think he can win, regardless of Gaethje's power and stuff. He also has a better gas tank too, which helps. But yeah, if Max can maybe get into that flow state, I don't know if I would talk to the commentary while Gaethje's in front of me like he did against Kattar, but then at least in that aspect, I would be hopeful.
Yeah. I will provide my prediction here, and then we can throw it back to you, Jerry. I think Holloway wins this fight, and maybe there's a tad bit of bias here, because Max Holloway is my favorite fighter, and I've done my best to remove bias when previewing fights, when talking about fights. But there's a very small group of guys that I still kind of hold that for, and Max Holloway is one of them. So maybe I am being a tad bit biased here. At the same time, I've never when I think the last time I got a Max Holloway prediction wrong was the second fight with Volk. So I picked him to lose the trilogy with Volk. Picked him in every fight since. So I do think I also have a good track record picking Holloway fights, even though he is my favorite fighter. Now, with that being said, I think Holloway can do a lot of things that Eddie Alvarez did to beat Justin Gaethje. When you look back at that fight, and I was listening to the corner, Alvarez's corner between rounds, and they really wanted Eddie to throw in combination, or they wanted him to throw in threes, and they wanted him to kind of mix the pace a little bit. So, and they wanted him to dig to the body. Those were kind of the real keys to their game plan against Gaethje, and it worked very well. And those are all things that Max can do. I think Max can sit at the edge of distance and hit Gaethje with straight shots, and he's going to mix up the pace on those shots. It's going to be, the 1-2. Max can throw at 50%, and then he steps off the angle. Then he throws the 1-2 at 100%, and that kind of speed changing is very impressive. And we've seen him throw at different speeds. In the Korean Zombie fight, he was throwing at 150%. And you can say whatever you want about Korean Zombie. He retired after that fight, but you really don't see Max sit down on shots like that. Against Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen, in the 5th round, his corner said, "Hey, World War III. If you want to win this fight, we gotta go to World War III." Max sat in the pocket, and he got hit a little bit in that round. But at the end of that round, he sat down on 2 counters, hurt Arnold once, and dropped him with 1 second left in that fight because he sat down and threw as hard as he could. So I think Holloway's power is being underrated, and I think his ability to sit on the edge and mix up speeds and kind of touch, and then boom, throw one that hurts you really bad. So I think that's going to be important. I think he's going to dig to the body. I think he's going to throw straights. He's going to throw jabs to the body. He's going to kick to the body. I think we see that spinning back kick to the body a couple of times. And once again, against Arnold, using a lot more movement, making sure he doesn't get hit with the big Arnold hooks, because Arnold Allen is one of the most underrated fighters in the sport, and Holloway looked great that night. So I think we see Max staying out of the way of those good shot or the big shots, but when he's in Gaethje's face, he's going to be throwing in combos, different speeds to the head, to the body, and I think he's going to land a lot. And I think that really adds up over the course of 3 rounds, and I think Max Holloway is going to get the finish here and finish this in the championship rounds because of that add-on of volume, because of that body work. Max Holloway also very, very good uppercuts, can throw knees. Gaethje really loves to dip, go undershots. Max dropped Volkanovski with the uppercut. So I just think there's a lot of things that Max can do that we haven't really seen guys do against Gaethje. That said, Gaethje hits him once, opens a cut on his eyebrow, and starts kicking him in the leg. Now your game plan's toast. If you can't move and you can't get out of the way of the big shots because your leg's fucked up, there goes your game plan. If you got blood rushing into your eye and you can't see the big hook coming and you're getting hit more often, there goes your game plan. So, but like I said, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but I do really like Max in this spot.
Yeah, I can see Max winning this fight. I just am leaning towards Gaethje, and something that we haven't even discussed at all. And obviously, I think Anthony, you might have brought it up briefly with Gaethje's last 2 losses were submissions. That's something that Gaethje started out with. He was a wrestler in high school, wrestler in college. Maybe, and I know it's not his style now, but maybe we see him go to that ground game against Max Holloway, because I don't know last time I saw Max really grappling and wrestling. It always seems like stand-up wars. So that's something that's just in the back of my mind of maybe we could see Gaethje go down, but it's the BMF fight and they want to entertain. So I think it'll be stand-up, but it's just something to keep an eye on. I am leaning at this very second towards Gaethje, but I could swing very easily by the end of the week. So still a lot of time left.
No, I was gonna say that no, definitely knowing it's a 5 round fight makes me feel a little bit better for Holloway with the body work like you were saying too, but I don't know. We'll see. I think he's fought Volk 3 times, kind of like we were saying, and fighting someone that technical 3 times in a row, and look how he did Volk did against Islam and stuff. Like I think it helps on the technical side of fighting someone, even though they're bigger, they might hit a little hard. For Gaethje, that is, Holloway can stay out the way because has Holloway ever been knocked down or never been knocked down, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty insane. So that's interesting to see if that changes with this fight. But the other thing was I did see that thing of Gaethje ducking down and stuff, and I saw that Holloway had caught not only Holloway had only caught Volk with uppercuts, we caught him with a head kick once when he was kind of doing the duck down. So that is interesting too, because I wish Holloway would kick a little bit more in this fight, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Last thing I'll add on this, or 2 things. Holloway loves to roll that dice. Everyone's talking about jumping guillotines. Holloway will roll for that dice choke. Almost got Korean Zombie in it. Gaethje shoots a sloppy shot. I don't know that Holloway is going to wrestle, but he's going to go for a front choke. And his darce is, I believe he's hit it a couple times early in his career and just hasn't really been in position to land it since. He may roll that darce. Second thing that I will add is that we see different versions of Holloway in every fight. It makes it really hard to say exactly what Holloway is good at. If you're looking at, does he throw a good jab, a good straight, good kicks? What exactly does he do? Because we see different techniques come out, different fights, and he uses what he needs when he needs it. He threw 2 spinning wheel kicks or spinning hook kicks against Arnold Allen. I watched it back and I was like, I don't remember Max Holloway throwing spinning wheel kicks. So there's just something about that I really like. Like, hey, I've got every single tool in the book. Maybe today I don't use the uppercut because this guy isn't going to give me that shot. But when that guy's giving me that shot, I'm going to throw that uppercut all night long. And I just think that is something that I also really like. When I don't feel like Gaethje has that adaptability in his skills where Gaethje's Gaethje. I think Max can kind of change what he does a little bit better than Gaethje. So that's another thing that I like in this fight. All right. That might be the best fight on the card. It's also the fight we talked the longest about, which completely fine because that is an outstanding fight. Moving down to another outstanding fight, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. This fight is currently, well, let me get the odds here. This fight is currently sitting with Arman as a minus 225 favorite, while Charles Oliveira is the underdog at plus 185. What do you guys make of this fight? Another crucial fight for this lightweight division. The winner of this may get a title shot over the winner of the fight we just talked about. It's very hard to know. The winner may fight Conor McGregor. Who knows? What I do know is the winner is going to be in a great, great spot. What do you guys make of this fight? Have no clue whose turn it is to go first. So, Jerry, we can throw it over to you.
First of all, I'm hammering Charles Oliveira at plus money. Plus 175. Parlaying of him and Jamahal Hill because you never know what's going to happen in those fights. And then I really like Jiri, which we'll touch on later, at plus 100. That's a weird fight. But those 3 underdogs, maybe throw some Max Holloway in. This is why I'm going to hate betting on the UFC 300 because the underdogs have every chance to win just as much as the favorites do. But back to this fight, I think Charles Oliveira is the second best fighter in the lightweight division after Islam Makhachev. He's all around good. The big issue is maybe his chin. He can get rocked at times, but he's been rocked. We saw him say the Michael Chandler fight. He got rocked, came back and knocked him out. I even think the Gaethje fight, Gaethje might have landed a good shot, couple shots on him. Same with Poirier, comes out and has the ability to submit him. Arman Tsarukyan has been on a tear, though. Only 2 losses in the UFC. Mateus Gamrot, who's right around that top area, and Islam. A lot of people lost to Islam.
I thought he beat Gamrot too in that fight.
I did as well. I scored that fight for Tsarukyan. live and at a rewatch. So I watched it 2 different times and thought he
Okay.
won.
So it's really his only real loss was Islam. That's not a bad loss for your UFC.
Short notice UFC debut.
Oh, it was short. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I forgot about that. I missed that. And I guess in Russia, so enemy territory as well for him. But his fight against Beneil Dariush, he looked damn good in that one. So that's the thing. Like he has the power and he can come out quickly. And if he can land a couple shots on Charles early on, might be a long night for Oliveira. But I could see Oliveira going down to the ground using his jiu-jitsu and taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely one that I'm hammering. I'm hammering Charles Oliveira. I'm excited, but it's tough because I think Arman is fantastic. That Gamrot fight the first time when I watched it, I don't know what they were ranked during that, but that
They were both in the 10 to 15 range. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they were both
like back to back.
Yeah, they were like both ranked just outside of the top 10, and they were both like, all right, these are two of the best prospects, so we're gonna book them 5-round main event.
Okay, so that's what I remember. What a great main event too for them. But that's what I remember them being like the up and coming prospects. And I thought Arman won that fight. Probably why I chose to follow him more than Gamrot, or why I like. So it's tough because I really like Arman. Like you said, I definitely think Oliveira's been hittable. Tsarukyan could definitely land that knockout and stuff. He's also competent on the ground and with the wrestling, just overall well balanced. But I'm gonna go with Oliveira, who time and time again seems to pull off the crazy. I wouldn't say upset, but I think he might have been dogged against Gaethje, against Poirier, and I can't remember Chandler. But even if he gets knocked down, he's not out because he can find that submission at any moment. And then, people got to worry about the takedown. He is just sneaky striking with the hands, and also always seems to touch up his opponent too and get a knockdown of his own in there. So I'm gonna expect. It's probably not going to be a long fight, but amidst all the chaos, I'm going to say maybe Charles Oliveira finds a way to get it done again.
Okay, so I want to touch on this from two perspectives. I want to start with like betting philosophy because you guys have both talked about betting Charles, and I agree. And second, I want to talk about an actual fight preview. So that's kind of the two angles my head's at. First, when you look at Charles from a betting perspective, Charles Oliveira is plus 190 against Arman Tsarukyan. His plus 115 against Dariush, plus 165 against Islam, minus 132 Gaethje, plus 115 Poirier, minus 125 Chandler, plus 137 Ferguson, minus 130 Kevin Lee. So this is by far the biggest underdog that he has been in, I guess, since his rise to the top of the division. Kevin Lee was ranked ahead of him in that fight. That's why I included Kevin Lee. So it's by far the biggest underdog he's been. And historically, he has done good as an underdog, with the only loss being against Islam. Islam was a smaller favorite than Arman Tsarukyan in this fight. So just from that perspective, I think Charles is a good bet. But I like to bet on fighters that win fights that they probably shouldn't win. You are a plus 185 dog. You're a plus 185 dog for a reason. But when you have the most finishes in UFC history, you can lose 14 minutes of a fight and land a knockout or land a sub. So from a betting perspective, it's the biggest dog he's been since getting to the top of the division. And he is the type of guy that you want to bet on as an underdog because maybe he should be the underdog, but he can still cash as a bet. Now, from a preview perspective, this is a really interesting fight because I think a lot of people just assume that you can take Charles down and he does nothing when he's on his back. And I think that's very false. He actively hunts legs. He's going to try arm bars. He's going to try and land sweeps. That's why he went to his back against Poirier, Gaethje, and so on, because, hey, get on top of me. And I have elite sweeps to get from bottom to top. The reason that he stays on his back for so long is because he hunts submissions, and maybe he shouldn't hunt submissions for as long as he does. But it looks like he's being dominated in fights where he's really just playing off his back, and maybe he shouldn't do that, but he's not out of fights. That being said, in this fight, if Arman hurts him on the feet, he can do exactly what Islam did and get on top after hurting him and land massive ground and pound. Well, he would do Arman more likely ground and pound. Islam was a submission, but he can finish this fight if he hurts Oliveira. You can flip that same thing around. If Oliveira hurts you on the feet, go to the ground, still got power, he can still sub you. So I think Charles has just as much upside in that regard. The biggest concern for me on the Charles side is the arm and clinch game, because Charles is elite out of the clinch. The knees he throws to your body hurt bad, and if you watch how Gaethje and Poirier react when they're in the clinch, is all you need to know about how good Charles is in the clinch. The second that Charles gets you in the clinch, the other fighter goes, "I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Get me out of here." And that's how he knocked out Gaethje, because he got to the clinch, and then Gaethje immediately went backwards, and Charles just said, "I'll just hit you as you leave the clinch." That being said, Islam, when he was in the clinch, he said, "All right, I'm going to take you down." So that is a spot where Arman could have a lot of success, is actually being able to compete with Charles in the clinch. Now, I think Arman's going to land those takedowns. I think Charles gets back to his feet, maybe not 4 times around, but maybe he gets up. I think he gets up just enough to create absolutely chaotic striking exchanges on the feet. And on the feet, you have 2 guys who get hit. Like Arman Tsarukyan got dropped against Joaquim Silva. Joaquim Silva wasn't ranked then, and he's not ranked now, and he won't be ranked for the rest of his career. Arman Tsarukyan gets hit a lot, and you just haven't seen Arman fight Gaethje, Poirier to show that he gets hit a lot. He's fighting guys that don't hit as hard and don't land as often. And now he's going to get in 50-50 exchanges with the guy with knockout power and has landed shots in 50-50 exchanges. He knocked out Chandler in a 50-50 exchange, knocked down Gaethje. So for me, I think when maybe we only get 4 chaotic exchanges, but I think in one of those chaotic exchanges, Oliveira lands a punch that finishes his fight. So I like Oliveira as well. That was a long-winded rant, but I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about Charles's game and what happens when he gets taken down. So I wanted to clear those up.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what he did to Beneil Dariush in the last fight. He showed that knockout power. Sure, it wasn't like in a minute the same way that Tsarukyan did it. He did it in a minute 4 for Tsarukyan. Oliveira got him in 4 minutes, 10 seconds. So still, but he is dangerous from everywhere. And if he does land those strikes, we've seen the power he has against. We were just talking about Justin Gaethje, of how powerful he is and how dangerous he is. Oliveira felt those shots and still managed to knock him down and then get the submission. Arman Tsarukyan has not felt that power. He doesn't have that power, in my opinion. That I think Oliveira is a dog in this for some bizarre reason. I think he's the better fighter still. Like I said, I think he's the second best fighter in this division all around after Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Arman's great, but exactly like you said, I think Charles Oliveira is great, and I think I would also put him at the second best fighter. But I think he's just if you're going to give him this much of an underdog and give him, I mean, it's tough to call him a prospect anymore. Tsarukyan is definitively in that title picture. I just think he's still young. I don't like the track record of people he's fought compared to, you can pick any one of Charles's last 5 fights, and that's a killer. So I'm going to take the vet with, like James said earlier, with the most finishes all time to probably sneak another one in here.
I do want to just say one other quick thing, but we haven't seen Oliveira go that deep in fights. Like, he has had a couple decisions. His last decision, though, was that Tony Ferguson fight. And realistically, if Tony Ferguson wasn't Tony Ferguson, the guy's tapping to that armbar. His arm looked like it was about a snap in half. So there was that. He also went to the 3rd round with Poirier, but got him out in the first minute there. Tsarukyan has gone 5 rounds, obviously, with Mateusz Gamrot, 3 rounds with a couple other guys as of late. So that's just something in the back of my mind that we could be, maybe Tsarukyan is the better gas tank. This is also only a 3-round fight, so we'll see.
Yeah. I think the gas in this fight is going to be the person that's dictating it. Charles can make Arman tired with shots to the body. With that being said, if Arman's on top and Charles is on his back, hunting subs and hunting sweeps and isn't landing them, then it's like Arman's not going to be tired. So I think the person that is more tired in the third round, if it gets there, is going to be dependent on how exactly the fight goes, which is kind of hard to project. It's not like I'm not 100% confident that either guy is going to be more tired than the other in the last round, if that makes any sense. All right. This next fight is the one that we're going to spend the least amount of time talking about. Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. Bo Nickal. Oh, let's make sure we get the odds on this one. Bo Nickal.
Like minus 3,800 last I saw, I think.
It's
Let's
insane.
move then.
2,100.
Yeah, we got 2,100 here.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I got
20.
DraftKings got it minus 3,800.
And Cody Brundage plus 1,100 on the comeback. Does anyone think the biggest favorite in UFC history is losing this fight?
Yes. No.
No, I did not. I didn't know. That's insane. That's the biggest favorite in UFC history.
He's breaking his own record from his last fight against Valverde.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
I think he
That
probably
should tell
takes
the
him
UFC
down and
something.
stubs him. So, does anyone think anything differently?
Nope.
No, I say that. What round do you think? Because the over/under is usually at. I think I saw it once at 1.5, but it's usually like.
I was seeing 1.5, but it's minus 330 for under, plus 2
exactly
over. So.
Does anyone think the second half or second round? All right.
No, I think we get a Bo Nickal sub in the first round. Cody Brundage, he's alive for two things. Actually hits kind of hard, but it's also middleweight, so everyone hits kind of hard. Maybe Bo Nickal maybe Brundage cracks him on the chin. I doubt it, but possible. Maybe Bo does something illegal, and Cody just says, all right, there's my DQ. I did my job. So those are your two paths to a Brundage victory.
Well, what I'm hearing is Cody Brundage is the one to bet on.
Yeah. That should tell you something. The UFC might need to pick some better fights for Bo Nickal, but
yeah,
at least after this one.
I think he will after this one. I think this is let's get him a squash on 300. And then we test him the next time out. I think
they've already tried to do that to him twice.
That is true.
But I agree.
Let's move on to a more compelling fight that's probably going to be more competitive. Hopefully, it's going to be more competitive. Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksander Rakic. Jerry, let's throw this one over to you. Oh, I'll throw the odds out here first, and then we'll throw it over to you, Jerry, because it sounded like you had a strong take on this fight. Very closely lined fight. Right now, Jiri Prochazka plus 100. Rakic is minus 120. Some places have it a little bit closer. Some minus 105s floating out there on Prochazka, but right now, plus 100 and minus 120 is your most common line. So, Jerry, I'll let you lead this one off since you have a strong opinion on it, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I just really like, and some of this might be a little biased. It's hard. I try and keep it out as well, but I really like Jiri Prochazka. I like the way he fights. I like his style. I think he's a very weird and interesting guy as well. So that puts a bit of it, but also he's just such a dangerous striker. And he did just lose to to Alex Pereira, who's another dangerous striker, as we spoke about earlier. Meanwhile, Aleksander Rakic lost to Jan Blachowicz, or was that the one that who fought Jan?
He popped his knee out in that fight.
Yeah.
And was he? I have to watch that back. Was he winning at that point, or was
it was either one? He definitely won the second round. I believe he won the first round too. It was either 2-0 Rakic or 1-1.
So why am I blanking on who Jan fought? Oh, it's Ankalaev is who Jan fought and drew with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just think Jiri is one of those just solid strikers, and I think he's up there with Jamahal Hill and Alex Pereira in terms of his abilities in the light heavyweight division. I think he gets it done. I'm not sure it'll be a finish. I think it'll probably end up being a decision just because I don't think Rakic is going to get knocked out at all because he has beaten some tough guys also, but I'm just leaning that way at the moment.
Yeah, I was surprised at the line considering coming back from the knee injury. His last wins were against Thiago Santos, who, went through that skid after that John Jones fight. He was just gun shy and couldn't buy a win, to be honest. And then before that in 2020, which I can't remember what Anthony Smith was like on the dot in 2020, which if he was, because what he is now is, not the same, but that's a win against Anthony Smith. So kind of to me, two people that were past their prime a little bit, both had their own issues a little bit. And then what I did remember was that fight was, I had it 1-1, I think, but I do remember thinking it could have been definitely 2-0 him. Um, so just yeah, with his recent fights and then coming off the injury, I was surprised that Jiri was underdogged like that. Considering he just lost to Pereira, who's headlining it. How highly everyone thinks of Pereira. So originally that's what threw me off, but I'm gonna also go Jiri with you. I like the wildness, the striking. I think I was looking. I really gotta watch that beginning of that Jan fight, Rakic fight again to see it, but because I know I saw he was 1 for 4 on takedowns and stuff. Rakic was, but even with saying that, I think Jiri did good enough against Glover in that Glover fight when Glover really tried to take it to the ground and stuff. So we'll see. This is one I would have to watch more, but first is I'm going Jiri.
Yeah, so I'm on the other side on this one, and I don't really like Jiri's game. I think it's kind of, first of all, the stance. I mean, we saw it in the last fight. He gets smoked by leg kicks bad. And I remember watching film before he fought Pereira. He got hit by 3 leg kicks in his entire UFC run. 3. I think 1 or 2 knocked him down, and the other made him do a 360 and spin in a circle. So I saw that, and I went, he gets hit by 3 leg kicks in his UFC career, and each one had a massive effect. And now we're putting him in here with the biggest leg kicker in the sport. And then Alex Pereira went out there, and I know he's got great leg kicks, but Jiri can't check them. And what's a bigger concern is that not only does he not check them, but when he gets hurt to the legs, all of his the thing that makes him unique, the movement, the stance switches, the unorthodoxness, all of that really just falls apart when his legs get hurt. He just can't do those things, and his stance is inviting the leg kick. So if he gets hurt to the legs, his whole game falls apart, and he's just there to be hit too much because he's a guy that relies on head movement and movement to avoid shots. Well, when you can't move as efficiently as you want, you're going to get hit. So I think his game just really falls apart when he gets kicked in the legs. And Rakic kicks the legs. I mean, you pull up the Jan fight, and it's immediately
he was beating up Jan, right?
Yeah, he was hitting him with a
with
lot
the
of
leg kicks.
Yeah. And I believe he's also like 6'7", so he's going to be the longer guy, and we'll be able to sit on the outside. Yeah, how tall is he? 6'4". Why did I think he was 6'7"? I'm an idiot. But he's still a very big guy in the octagon, my point. So I think he sits on the outside, picks apart at these legs, and I think the distance is going to be enough to avoid some of the big shots from Jiri, and he's just going to beat up on that lead leg. That said, he is coming back from a leg injury, so maybe he's got the yips with throwing those leg kicks. Like, when you're throwing a leg kick, you're putting yourself at risk and your own leg at risk as well. So I think there's a real chance he has the yips at throwing those leg kicks, but if he doesn't, I think he could really beat Jiri up with those leg kicks. My point. So
yeah, it's one of those ones that if he does go after the legs, then Jiri will be in trouble. It's I also was kind of surprised just looking back at it. I definitely forgot that Jiri's only had 4 fights in the UFC and got to a title fight on his 3rd fight. So it's something that he hasn't fought tough dudes like Rakic necessarily has. He obviously fought Glover. If Glover was smarter in that fight, he would have won that fight. Don't shoot for the takedown when you were smashing his head in. So that might have been another loss. What happened. They lost to Pereira. I'm still backing him to get it done here, but Rakic is a dangerous guy.
Yeah.
I agree. This is definitely one where I just don't. There's not a name I love on Rakic's resume, but this could be the first one. So, and especially, I do remember that Jan, the leg kicks are eating Jan up too, and then randomly, his knee blew out. Was it on a throwing? Was it throwing a kick or was it stepping back?
I don't remember, honestly. I think it was throwing. I watched that fight yesterday too, and I was like, all right, here's where he pops out his leg, and I just kind of was like, all right, there's no point in watching the third round. He blows his leg out. So, but I want to say it was throwing the kick and then when he stepped back. But maybe I'm.
I think this is a great test for Jiri too, to see if he really has staying power at the elite level, highest divisions, or he kind of, like you said, got that quick rocket ship up to the belt. But I think he's wild enough to hopefully maybe do that warrior spirit and yell in the snow again.
Yeah, I think it's a great test for both guys, and I think the odds, the fact that it's almost a pick 'em, I think it is reflective of that. I think this is going to be a very telling fight for both guys. I think it's very, very good matchmaking. So I really like this fight. All right, moving on, we have a fight that is just good luck calling this one. Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. Kattar, another guy coming back from a knee injury. He injured his knee against Arnold Allen, coming back to face Aljamain Sterling, who Sterling moving up from 135, obviously a champion at 35, making that 145 debut. And we have Sterling at minus 162. Some places a little bit lower, some places a little bit higher. And the comeback on Calvin Kattar is plus 136. So another close in line fight, but Aljamain Sterling as the slight favorite. What do you guys make of all of this? I think there's a ton of questions on both sides. So what do you guys make of the Kattar returning from the knee injury? And I believe he's 36. Makes it a little bit difficult to come back from a knee injury. And on the Sterling side, moving weight classes, what do you make of all this movement? Jerry, we can throw it over to you. Jerry, we'll throw it over to you first.
I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in this fight.
That was my answer, exact verbatim right there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think that sums it up right there. Is Calvin Kattar, he's lost 3 of his last 4. But looking at those fights, Max Holloway, not surprising he'd lose that one. That was an absolute war. Josh Emmett was a war. He lost a split decision there.
I think he won that fight. That's another one that
I thought he should have won that fight, but decision didn't
go. Close.
Yeah. And then obviously the knee injury against Arnold Allen. 3 losses that are hard to knock someone for having. Whereas Aljamain Sterling had his title reign, got knocked out by Sean O'Malley, and now he's moving up a division. So I have no idea how his game will transition up a division. It'll be interesting to see if it goes more the try and stand up and fight like he did with O'Malley, which I think was a mistake. But O'Malley was doing a good job defending the takedowns in that one, it seems. So maybe he goes for takedowns against Calvin Kattar, but maybe Kattar's able to defend those. It's a fight that I have so many questions on, and I don't know if I'm going to bet on this one at all. We've talked about betting a bit on these fights. This is one that I just have too many questions for to make a pick.
Yeah, I agree. You talked about those losses. I was going to say that Emmett one was a little iffy, as in saying that's when I thought he should have really got, because I think Calvin Kattar's so good, but he keeps dropping too many. He keeps losing one that he shouldn't lose or stuff. But if you thought that was controversial then, because I can't quite remember that fight 100%. And then, but the other thing is when he fought Giga was supposed to be the hottest prospect out, and then Kattar, from what I remember, just ran through him. I remember not thinking that fight was close.
I believe he was plus 200 in that spot, and he beat Giga.
That's what bad. So I don't know, it's what Kattar are you going to get? He definitely has the talent. I don't think anyone's ever thought different on that. It's just that 3-round fight. Aljo's a backpack, you're always just at risk of just losing 2 just off control time alone. Now maybe going up a weight class, Aljo can't weight bully as much, maybe a little bit compared to people that are just already used to this weight class. Doesn't Aljo usually had some length advantage too, right? On most fighters. I don't know how tall Calvin Kattar is.
He was, so, I in my opinion, he was the biggest guy in that weight class at 135.
Yeah. So
both with length and like jacked as well. It's not like he was, like guys like Corey and Sean were bigger, like lengthwise, but he was long and massive.
Yeah, he was solid. He was like a rock too. That's what I'm saying. Once he gets the backpack, like it's hard to escape that man. So I don't know. I think I'm tempted to go with the wrestler, I guess, ultimately. And I do think Aljo has some good striking too. I don't think he's just completely one dimensional. I just think that one dimension of wrestling is, insane compared to his striking. So I'm tempted to go with the wrestler, but yeah, overall, same thing. No idea. There's way too many questions for a first fight.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of questions. How's Kattar going to look at this age coming off the injury? I don't know. Your takedown defense is not going to get better while you're rehabbing a knee injury. It's just impossible. It's going to get worse as you get older as well. So, Sterling, how does he look physically at 145? How does his chin look at 145? Moving up, is it much better? Or is the power going to negate the improvement in chin? How does the cardio look? Does not weight cutting, does skipping the weight cut or minimizing it, it's probably a better word, is that going to, mean you're more healthy and your chin is better? Or is that going to mean that since you're not cutting weight, you're not running as much, you're not doing as much as you're not doing the extra things that you had to do to make the 135-pound limit? And how does so I don't know how his cardio is going to look. That said, Sterling, sensational grappler. The mix of wrestling and jiu-jitsu is off the charts. I think his win over Corey Sandhagen, where he subbed Corey in less than a minute, is often overlooked. And I think Corey's better now, but that was still a sensational win at the time. So I have a lot of respect for both these guys. Kattar, massively underrated boxing, and hey, don't get caught by Kattar. Do not let Kattar catch you. Even that Max Holloway fight, there's a moment that fight didn't get stopped because Kattar would get beat up, and then he's going to go, all right, here comes my straight right. And the straight right lands, and it lands hard. So that fight wasn't stopped because of the threat that Kattar has in his boxing, kind of dissuaded the stoppage. So a lot of respect for both these guys. Couldn't tell you who's going to win. I want to this is the last. We're getting to the point now where I haven't watched film yet. I watch film on every other fight, not Bo and Cody, because we know how that's going. And Kelvin doesn't have a track record of grapplers, similar to Max Holloway in a sense where you look at a lot of his fights, and a lot of guys who are predominantly strikers. So I kind of want to go back and look and see, did Emmett grapple? Because he's a wrestler. I don't think he did a ton, but I remember there being some clinch in that fight. And I'll probably go back and watch this Zabit fight, and see how he dealt with the grappling of Zabit. So I'll probably look at those two fights and kind of come up with a better opinion based off those. But I'm not sure that that's even going to tell you that much. So
yeah, just one other thing I want to throw out on this one is the guy Aljamain Sterling lost to it 135, 5'11", he's so 4 inches taller and had a little bit longer reach. Calvin Kattar, 5'11", has a little bit longer reach. So throwing that out there, if he can fend off the takedowns, he'll be able to possibly outstrike him.
Mm-hmm. I'll also add this in terms of a betting perspective, because we have talked about betting a lot this episode. I, in my opinion, a lot of people just say just pick winners, which great if you can consistently pick winners. But I think that when you're looking at fights that have a bunch of questions, you don't have the answer to those questions. So I think those questions should push the line to a pick 'em, right? If there's a lot of questions, you don't have the answers to. You're at best making an estimated guess. So I think in fights like these, you want to take the underdog when there is a laundry list of questions, because those questions could turn positive for one guy and negative for the other. So just on a baseline, you want the guy that's an underdog. So in theory, the betting side, in my opinion, on this one is going to be Kattar at like plus 130. But like you guys said, like I'm not really too interested in making a bet on this one. But I do want to add that because that is a theory that I firmly believe, that the more questions, the closer it should be lined to a pick 'em.
Yeah, I would like to bet on this, but I could probably an hour apart pick each guy. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So
I do, I'd say we stop it there in terms of fight specifics. But I do want to get a final thought from each of us, and there's plenty of fights to pick from as well for final thoughts. So, what's a fight or two fights that really stand out to you? We've got 2 left on the prelims and 4 on the early prelims. What's a scrap or two that is really interesting you, that stands out? Anthony, I believe it is your turn to go first.
definitely, I got to go with Cody Garbrandt. My Sacramento Team Alpha Male, original OG, one of the OGs that was one of my favorite fighters since I've been watching. This is a scary fight for him because his chin isn't the best, and Figgy, we'll see at another new weight class. But yeah, we'll see how Figueiredo does if that power translate. I'm sure it will. Cody's on a little 2-fight win streak. I think has looked pretty good in both of them. See if he can get the wrestling going or at least fight smart. I would say he has a speed advantage too. So if he could maybe not sit and trade in the pocket with someone like Figueiredo, and I know he was like a +2 something underdog. So that's the first fight I'm excited for. What a way to open a card, by the way. Early prelims is asinine.
Yeah.
And then the last one, the quick one I'll do is Diego Lopez. I'm becoming more and more a fan of him. Really like him. And then Sadiq Youssef is also awesome. Sadiq Youssef only fights like the toughest guys for some reason. Can never put a win streak together. It's like touchy feely a little bit. It's just like they're always fighting like great people, so it sucks. But that should definitely be a good fight as well.
Yeah, I want to, before you go, Jerry, I want to say two things off the back of that. Figgy and Garbrandt were supposed to fight for the title when Cody was making his debut at 125. That fight was booked, and Cody had to pull out. I believe it was a hip injury at the time. So at one point in time, this was for a title. So that's all you need to know about this fight. And I will also add, touchy-feely, like you said, just got a fight booked against Cub Swanson. So that's a banger matchup there. I believe that is on a prelim of one of the upcoming pay-per-views, whether it be 302 or 303. So throw that in there as well. All right, Jay, what are your final thoughts on this?
I mean, we'll say first of all,
card.
Opening the fight card like that, two former champions is superb. First of the two that I want to touch on is the second fight on the fight card. Bobby Green and Jim Miller, probably the least important fight on this card in terms of rankings and all that. Maybe Moicano and Jalen Turner, but those guys are both ranked. I can't wait to see this. Jim Miller fought on UFC 100, 200, and now 300. Bobby Green is that dude that will fight anybody, anywhere. It could be in Kimbo's backyard or Madison Square Garden or T-Mobile Arena. It's someone who just likes to scrap. I want to see what happens. I want to see Jim Miller get one more, extend his lead or record, I guess, atop of the most wins in UFC history. And the other fight, I'm curious, and this is one I have a lot of questions about, is will Kayla Harrison make weight? And if she does, how will she be looking in that fight against Holly Holm? Holly Holm is definitely on the older side. If we go in just straight fighting, I'm leaning towards Kayla Harrison at the moment. But there's all those other issues. If she was a lightweight, 155 fighter, now she's going down to bantamweight at 120 or 135. Well, 125. Yeah. 35. Damn, numbers and letters are hard right now. I'm curious to see how that 20-pound difference is going to be because she's a big lady. It's going to be one of those fights that I'm not sure what's going to happen. And it's one of the ones that it'll be kind of on pins and needles up until the weigh-in's made.
Yeah, I'd like to see a betting line. Will Kayla Harrison make weight? That may be more interesting than any line you can provide on a fight for this.
That's the crazy thing is she's a minus. I want to say what was it? What did I see? She was like minus 500.
She's one of the bigger favorites on the card. Let's see here.
Minus is what I'm seeing.
Yep, and 330 comeback on home. So, also. First, Kayla Harrison coming over from the PFL. PFL does not allow elbows in its season format. Sometimes they adjust that rule, but largely no elbows in the PFL. Kayla Harrison has not been allowed to use elbows for like years. Last time she used elbows, she almost killed somebody. Not actually, but like face gushing blood because she's a dominant grappler. She gets on top. Her elbows are don't get on bottom because you're getting messed up with elbows. So that's another thing with that fight that I think is very interesting. It's how she looks when she's able to fight an MMA fight with elbows, which is strange that even has to be a discussion, but that's about all you need to know about PFL. All right. You guys touched on a lot of the fights I like. I'll throw out Jalen Turner and Renato Moicano. Jalen Turner is one of my favorite fighters to watch. The guy is just absolutely ridiculously good. and he loses a lot of fights for considering the skill level. The size and skill that he has for that division he has found a way to lose quite a few fights in that division. Not like he's losing 30 fights, but lost to Dan Hooker. I thought that was a fight he could have and should have won.
And Gamrot too, I thought.
Yeah.
He had a chance for that one.
Gamrot out-wrestled him, but Turner on the feet, he is, the power he has, I don't know how Dan Hooker's head is still on his shoulders, let alone, him being conscious of finishing that fight. That's a lot of respect to Dan Hooker as well. But Turner, lethal guy on the feet and has shown some great submissions, specifically front chokes because of that length. He can wrap up subs from top. Renato Moicano has just absolutely surged in popularity with his Money Moicano bit. And it's helped because he has consistently been in fun fights. So combination with a little added personality, hilarious guy. The post-fight interviews are absolutely ridiculous. And his fights have delivered as well. It's not like he's putting on stinkers and then causing some storm on the mic. He has been very entertaining as well. So that is the fight that I'll throw out there for a final thought.
At this point, I'm just going to throw one more because there's only one fight we haven't mentioned at all. Jessica Andrade, Marina Rodriguez, two fighters that are from Brazil, 4-6 in the strawweight division. Andrade, a former champion. Don't know what to really expect, but thought I'd just say that one out there because we haven't spoken on it at all.
Yeah, good call. I didn't realize that we had touched on literally every single other fight. But I think that is actually one of the funnest. I know a lot of people look at women's fights and go, "Oh, two women," but I think this card, I think, has two of the best women's fights that you can book in the co-main event. I will never say that a fight involving Holly Holm is one of the best women's fights you can make, but that is still an intriguing fight. So I think that's actually going to be a banger. Those two girls are very good strikers. Marina looked pretty good in her last fight against Michelle Watterson as well. So I think that's a sleeper on the card.
Yeah, I think, Rodriguez is good, and I'm always there for an unchallenged fight. She's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, and she was
go ahead.
She was Madison Square Garden, I believe, the prelim main event or the first fight on the main card last time she fought, and now she's down in the early prelim. So that's kind of an indication of the depth. Just the drop that she's done in terms of card placement is very telling.
Yeah, absolutely. It opened as an even line. Andrade's a slight favorite now, so it's another one that's just a pick 'em. Should be a good fight.
Yep. All right, UFC 300. We managed to talk about every fight, even if not in extremely detail. Lots of talk on the main card, obviously. And next week, we're doing it again. UFC 300, it will be the recap. And, we talked a little bit about how important some of these fights are. Like the Jiri Rakic fight's very telling for that division. Talked about all the questions in the Kattar Aljamain fight. We'll have answers next week. Obviously, what are we doing with the titles? And more specifically, what do Max, Gaethje, Charles, and Arman do moving forward? Lots of questions out there. Maybe we get some fight announcements this week at the press conference. I won't get my hopes up too much, but I think we're going to have some answers as well from what is happening in some of these, other divisions as well. So next week, we're going to have answers to some questions, and we're going to have fights to break down. So next week will be just as packed as this week. Make sure you tune in for that one as well. But thank you for tuning in. Also, don't want to forget this. This week we're doing written previews for every single fight on the card. Usually we only do the main card, and those are out on Friday. This week, 3 different posts, main card, prelims, early prelims as well. So we're touching in detail every fight. Want to make sure to get that out there as well. But thank you so much for tuning into this episode of 8-Sided Freaks, and we will see you next week.